how is it even possible that people, labored, that had the ability to stack all these, then it comes back to the concept of alien technologies that help put these things together.
That's going to be kind of where we're going to be going, and we're going to be circling back around to is the alien technology. How did humans get that, right? And so that it really, in some shape or form, I think it ultimately kind of ties back to the Anunnaki theory, when humans were created at some capacity, at some point in the distant past.
What about the cosmos? What about the non-human intelligent aspect of this? Why were these pyramids lined up with constellations and stars? And I mean, we still can't take our eye off all the moving parts necessarily to be like, well, there still was a spiritual component to this as well.
I do think that there's a component where extraterrestrials were directly involved at some point with human development, whether that's at the genetic level or if that's at the technological level. But at some point, I think aliens have definitely been involved.
A farm? Are we an experiment? Are we sort of slaves? Are we like Disclosure Day?
I think it's a combination. Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I personally think that there potentially is some credence to the Anunnaki theory, and particularly after having read lots of different cross-cultural references and just seeing how these different mythoses have actually formed and developed.
Yeah, how close are we to the concept of the movie The Matrix? It makes me wonder. I mean, and there's a lot of different people that'll have different thoughts about that. I think when you also bring in the idea of disclosure and faith, and talking about how essentially just the mere discussion of it can really rattle people to their core. And welcome to Extra Terrestrial University. We got a great show here tonight. It's going to look a little bit different with the lineup, but we're excited to have Matt here with us tonight. Tone, of course, and Crooks is not going to be sitting this one out. We World Cup tonight, so there's all kinds of different scheduling going on that is normally, I would say, for the last couple of weeks, with World Cup being in Seattle and just being all over the United States, it's just been a different feel. So I'm not much of a soccer person. Are you guys European football soccer people?
I'm not a huge soccer fan personally, but I did have the pleasure of being able to go to Europe last year, and that was pretty awesome. So being able to actually see some of these soccer teams, actually kind of come here and kind of know them a little bit more is really kind of cool. So it's kind of nice to just see some familiarity.
It's been really cool, because Team Egypt, they were training in Spokane. So,
oh yeah, I heard about that actually. Yeah. One of my coworkers actually mentioned that. Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. That's where they had set up for their World Cup appearance. And then shuttling over, probably flying over for the actual games in Seattle. But there was a big concern of whether or not World Cup was going to go off the way that it does, internationally. And I think a lot of the people that have come here from all over the globe have been pleasantly surprised with America. They have their own version of what America is, and I think sometimes other medias portray the United States in a certain way that may not be desirable. And so I think it's been cool for this mass amount of people to come over and see America for what it is. And I think as a whole, Americans have shown up and shown out and have really left them with a good feeling. So that makes me happy. But we are here to talk about some normal things today, which I'm excited as we dive in and talk about pyramids. But before we do that, what's in store? What are we going to talk about tonight, Matt?
Well, tonight we're going to go over the ancient Egyptian chemical reactor theory. And this really all comes back to really Danny Jones. And then there's another researcher, Jeffrey Jubb, who has really taken independent research kind of to a whole new level when it comes to ancient civilizations. And so he has pretty much packed up his entire life and he has moved over to Egypt and he conducts live in-person research. He works with other researchers and PhDs in different fields, which is really, really cool. cross verify and, you know, collaborate to make sure that what he's actually trying to figure out is actually, you know, tangible. Does it have evidence that can be supported and corroborated? And so what's really, really cool about that research is he's able to back that up with what he's saying. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it kind of, it really kind of ties back all the way around to how humans were really able to get their technology, which I think is the biggest question out of this, is how are they able to do that? Especially given the timelines and the things that we've been told in mainstream media, right? With the particular timelines and, you know, patterns of human migration and how, you know, different hominid species, you know, interacted with each other, things like that. So I think there's some really interesting things that kind of, you know, are going on in the background that from this research, I think, you know, helps some of those more alternative theories become more viable and have some more tangible background to them.
Wow, man. So let's break it down a little bit here, kind of the beginnings of all this. So Tone and Matt, how do you all know one another? How did you come to be a guest on today's podcast?
It appears to be a case of just plain old stalking. Ryan and I were like, hey, let's do our 5-minute warm up. Planet Fitness. I think we hit the bikes, and then I think Matt and his buddy were on the stair steppers. And I heard aliens, I heard pyramids, I heard all these existential conversational pieces going on. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I can't pass this up. I'm like, this is a rare occasion, a rare opportunity. I stepped back there. There was a little bit of chuckles, I think more from your buddy, Matthew. Like, is this guy really coming to interject here? And I think you guys found out real quick. I'm like, I'm obsessed. I'm in. I'm for real. And they started putting out some theories. And tying them to UFOs a little bit, but really the baseline was the Danny Jones interview and the chemical factory basically theory. So we struck up a really good conversation for about, I don't know, Matthew, was about 7 minutes.
Yeah, 5-10 minutes, something like that. It wasn't too terribly long. Yeah.
So Matthew, he took a leap of faith and he's like, hey, yeah, let's keep talking about this, and that's where we're at, Pat.
Okay. Yeah. So when you came into the call, I thought that maybe you were a part of the Blue CUAP group. I wasn't quite sure with it. It just seemed like you all knew each other a lot longer than the story kind of bridges us together. So I'm excited that you're here to talk with us, because this is a fascinating topic. This is one thing I've heard, especially my introduction to a lot of things UAP and aliens was Joe Rogan, and a lot of the guests that he's had. And one of the questions was, how were the pyramids formed? How is it even possible that people, you know, labored, that had the ability to stack all these, you know, then it comes back to the concept of alien technologies that help put these things together, which I feel like is going to be, you're going to be steering us in that direction.
Yeah, no, that's going to be kind of where we're going to be going, and we're going to be circling back around to is the alien technology. How did humans get that, right? And so that it really, in some shape or form, I think it ultimately kind of ties back to the Anunnaki theory, where humans were created at some capacity at some point in the distant past, and it eventually, whether or not, you know, they left or we revolted, something along those lines may have happened. But then there was this great reset, right? And so it's from this reset, normal humanity as we know it has formed. But taking that step back, you know, 10, 15,000 years, where they were understanding things that we're just beginning to understand now, they understood things at a technological level that were much more advanced. And I don't think, based off of those timelines, that it makes sense that humans naturally would have been able to learn those things. I do think that there's a component where extraterrestrials were directly involved at some point with human development, whether that's at, you know, the genetic level or if that's at the technological level. But at some point, I think aliens have definitely been involved.
Matthew, that's incredible. I think to start a baseline, it's gonna be really quick with Pat and I. My baseline for Egypt is it's really blurry. It's really gray. It goes back to like 7th grade, where it's like, we talked about the pyramids a little bit. We talked about Tutankhamun. That's about it for me. That's my baseline. Pat, what's your baseline for Egypt? Because I know Matthew is definitely more recent on this. I think he really went, from what I could tell, he really went down the rabbit hole on this one. But Pat, what about you? What's your baseline knowledge of Egypt at this point in your life?
Real similar to you, Tone. Like, I feel like I could go back to like my 6th or 7th grade history book and go back to that. I mean, it's pretty basic.
Yeah.
I feel like when I watched the movie Stargate a long time ago, I never watched the television show Stargate, but the movie that really piqued my interest. Like, and thinking about in terms of that movie, and would you say that there is maybe some relational truth to that potentially, Matt, with the movie Stargate and what you're about to talk about this evening?
I definitely think, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different components to it. I mean, we're talking about a civilization that, potentially existed, 5,000 years, earlier than what we're even, mainstream, theories are even suggesting. So if they are already understanding, for example, oscillation technology, and they're understanding how to use, sound in order to, make chemical reactions occur, I'm not necessarily convinced that they wouldn't have space travel or some sort of advanced type of technology developed. I mean, especially, and to your point, yes, I have kind of gone down the rabbit hole a little bit with Egypt, and this is one of my more favorite topics. But if you just look at the level of technology and the scale, there is a definite component that I think it definitely could have happened.
So Matthew, you're gonna have to show some patience tonight. We got to go to clip 1. Pat and I really need to catch up in a major way. So let's head to clip 1.
This one is below the causeway of the Central Pyramid, but I do have some videos on my channel showing the inside of the Tomb of the Birds. So, but after this experience inside the Red Pyramid of Dashur, seeing the chemical staining and smelling this, it is pure ammonia. Again, we have those smelling salts over there, and it's the exact same experience. So you start in the.
You sure it's the same?
Let's take a whiff here, and we can see. It's very similar, and it's definitely not from bats. It is a completely different smell. It is pure chemical ammonia. Okay. As if you were to take a jug of ammonia of cleaning solution from underneath your kitchen counter, put your nose in it and smell it. And it gets progressively stronger as you pass through the 3 chambers. So you get into the first one, the smell of ammonia is a little weak. You get into the secondary reaction chamber and it gets stronger. And then as you climb the stairs to ascend into the final synthesis chamber, the smell of ammonia is staggering. It's like putting your nose inside of that, inside of this final synthesis chamber. And in my opinion, bats don't have a coordinated strategy for their urination plan, and they're all going to decide just to go into this one chamber and pee inside of this one chamber. Right. And people also say that it's because of the guards going down there and urinating. And I can assure you, it takes a good 10 minutes to get down the shaft into the Red Pyramid. It's a very laborious process to get down inside of these pyramid structures. And if you have to take a leak, you're just going to do it on the outside of the pyramid, because it's a heck of a lot easier just to pee off the side of this thing or go into the desert, as opposed to crawling down inside of the chambers. So that is a fallacious explanation of the cause of the staining and the smell of ammonia. And again, now we have chemical analysis, thanks to my colleagues at the Acida Project, where they took probably hundreds of samples back in 2010 of a variety of different things throughout Egypt and all of the ancient structures around there. And they did chemical analysis of all this stuff. So we actually have some detailed information about exactly what these compounds.
He really lays out that this is not from bats, and it's just a strong ammonia smell. Where do we go from here? So
I think it's important to talk about chemistry for just a second, and how chemical reactions work, and in context of what he's talking about. So when if either of you have been into a cave with bats, I don't know if you have. I personally have been Boulder Cave in Washington. It's awesome, and it has a very distinct smell. Actual chemical ammonia, so what you would produce at a fertilizer factory, smells very different. It has a very, very specific smell to it. And what he is talking about is the actual industrial form of ammonia, right? So that, that chemical product, that finalized chemical product that you would be using for cleaning. And so this when it comes to the staining and the samples that were taken, granted, I don't know exactly how, tall the samples were taken, from the wall. But judging by the description and judging by the images that he's shown, there's really no way that you could have that significant amount of staining just coming from urine or from bats. And you're also going to notice there's going to be fecal buildup, and we're not really seeing that, right? And so we know that there are pyramids and that there are structures in Egypt that have bats in them, and those structures are completely different in terms of their smell and in terms of how they look on the inside compared to what we're seeing here. And what we're seeing here is a very consistent form of staining, which is indicative of a process, right? So animals aren't going to be coordinated, to his point. And so there's no way that they can, have a specific, angle that they're all going at, to have a specific volume. That's not how bats are going to work. They're just going to all go to the bathroom on the floor. And so looking at it from that perspective, it makes you wonder, okay, well, what's really going on here? And so that then starts leading into looking at the different reactions that are occurring. Okay, so how do we really justify whether or not something is actually from an animal or if it's from a byproduct of chemical synthesis? Well, you can actually look at the specific molecules that are being either synthesized or catalyzed during a chemical reaction. And so if you're making ammonia, you're going to have a series of steps, right? And so if you're trying to get to a reaction, X, you might have to go through a reaction A, B, C, D, and E. And each of those steps is going to have what's called an intermediary. And that intermediary is a very specific, verifiable chain of that chemical reaction process. And what he's been able to find out is all of the necessary chain reactions, those intermediaries, are actually present during his trips to the pyramids, and that those are actually verifiable by the samples that were taken. So what we're seeing here is byproducts of a chain reaction, and you're not going to see that when animals are just using the bathroom.
This appears to be similar to the siloing within the legacy program with reverse engineering of UFOs, where everybody's put in silos and they're not allowed to talk to other different disciplines. And so it seems like the chemists weren't allowed into this conversation, Matt. I mean, when you lay it out like that, it does paint a pretty clear picture that, I know some of the other clips that I watched or other part of the video, he's like, basically when you're in with bats, it just smells like a bunch of mouse crap. Right. And you're saying exactly. Like to get to this level of ammonia, it really takes a lot of different.
Right. And that's got to be concentrated, almost pure product. Right. And so that's what he's talking about, is this isn't necessarily, okay, there's a little bit of ammonia afterward. No, this is an industrial amount of a specific chemical compound that is being utilized. And one thing that I do want to point out is, and he talks about this, I forget the name of the PhD chemist, but he actually had a chemist who was working with another Egyptologist reach out to him, and he actually congratulated him on how thorough his work was, and that his theory was probably accurate, that they were making ammonia and sulfuric acid essentially in the pyramids based off of the different analyses of the chemical reactions and how the chambers were actually operating and could have performed.
So this thing keeps building into an overall theory. Pat, do you feel comfortable moving forward to the next clip to kind of bring this all together?
Yeah, I do feel comfortable. I was just kind of posing a question of like, how many bats would it take to make that kind of ammonia?
It would take a lot. You would need a sizable colony. Bats, they have really small poop, and it takes a lot of bats and a long time for that to really build up. And so if people aren't actively disturbing it, it's gonna take a while for it to really develop that smell. I mean, of course, as mice and bats poop, it's gonna smell bad, right away. But the level of that concentrated smell is going to have to take a long time.
Well, and guano is nitrogen rich, but to be able to produce that much, it's not feasible, which opens up the door for everything we've been talking about. So let's jump into this next clip and we can watch that and keep the train moving, because there's a lot of different directions this could go. I feel like we could talk about this probably for hours. And
Absolutely.
we want to be able to give this to a product to where people are like, oh, like they're not falling asleep, you know.
No, I'm proud of ourselves. We're moving through it, and then like
Yeah.
4th of July, we might have the grand finale at the end.
Okay. I'm ready for this, and I'm hoping the
Yeah.
finale matches. That's the thing. I feel like when it comes to grand finale, some people are like, "It wasn't as great as it should have been." 250 years. Why didn't we have a better finale? I think it all depends on where you're coming from, but
That's
our
true.
goal is to have it all match with that. The fireworks show that I saw in Coeur d'Alene was pretty spot on. I thought they did a great job for that. I'm curious. You know, every community I think probably brought it for 250 years for a grand finale.
Yeah, I had a beautiful show right outside because I have a bunch of fields outside of my window, and the farmers, they had a whole show. So I had a beautiful farmer show.
See, that's what I'm saying. The Palouse representing once again.
That's right.
All right, let me jump into this and grab that clip, and here we go.
Even in the modern day applications, is used as a material for heat storage. And there's tons of research that specifically references black basalt from Egypt being tested and analyzed for a material for heat storage.
Okay.
So here at the pyramid of Nayusare in Abu Sir, there's this red granite or this red quartzite actually, red quartzite conduit system. So you're looking now at the inlet of this conduit system, and this red granite conduit runs underneath this black basalt temple floor in this direction, and it leads into a red quartzite collection bowl at the end of the conduit system. And the conventional explanation for this component is that it's for drainage of rainwater.
Okay.
Which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense, because red quartzite, it's not an exotic type of geology, but if you were just making a drainage channel, you would just carve it out of bedrock or limestone, and you wouldn't need to go through all of the extra effort of transporting this red quartzite to the site, carving it out of a much more difficult material to work with than limestone. And in my opinion, you don't collect rainwater. Right. So why would you be collecting rainwater drainage running off the side of your pharaonic burial? Again, the conventional story is that these things are pharaonic burials. So that explanation,
pharaoh tombs,
correct, right? So why would you want to collect the drainage water running off the side of your tomb?
So this little channel that's dug into this piece of rock here,
correct?
Water or liquid could drain through it, and what came off? What happens at the end right there?
Right. So this is the collection bowl.
Okay.
The conduit goes underneath this black basalt floor, and it deposits whatever they were collecting into this red quartzite collection bowl, which is exquisitely crafted. Wow. So they went through a lot of effort to make this component. And to me, this is not indicative of rainwater drainage. This is indicative of collecting something that had very particular importance to the civilization that built these things. And the first time I saw this, the immediate thought that popped into my head was aqueous chemicals, liquid chemicals, because it had to be something that was very, very important for them to collect it, and then they would do something with that chemical. Mm-hmm. So the reason that they've utilized...
Yeah, rain, if it rained, that thing would be overflowing in like an hour.
Right. And if you were draining rainwater, you would just drain it back into the bedrock or back into the Nile River.
Right, exactly.
And you have a huge source of water, and they could definitely purify water. So you don't need to collect rainwater drainage when you're right next to the Nile River, which is a abundant source of water. Mm-hmm. So that never really made sense. So this is the first artifact that completely changed my perception about the function of the Egyptian pyramids and pointed me toward the production of chemicals.
That's so interesting. I've never seen this before.
And this is... there's so many things to unpack about this particular site, but I'll mention two things. So the black basalt paving stones. Mm-hmm. So anytime you see black basalt, just remember heat storage.
Okay.
So once this material gets hot, it's interfacing with these electric fields that come from lightning.
So red quartzite. Let's talk about the significance of this. This is fascinating because red quartzite seemed to be utilized as like for offerings. It has like significant cultural background when you talk about Egyptian culture, but let's jump into your thoughts on that, Matt.
Yeah, so taking a little bit step back from the ritualistic side of things and thinking about it from the physics and the electromagnetic field side of things. So the rocks that they're dealing with are very, very particular with the types of magnetic fields that they have. And so when they're using these particular rocks, they're essentially allowing chemical reactions to continue on. And so one thing that he was kind of getting into before the clip ended is they're using these fields from these different materials essentially to get lightning to strike the pyramid or that structure. And that's the initial source of energy that's being used to kickstart all of these chemical reactions. And so what you'll actually find is at the tops of the pyramids or the structures, they're actually at a very, very specific angle. And with the way that these structures are angled, it's like 50.1 degrees or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what the exact angle is, but it's pretty consistent. But what it does is it essentially allows and optimizes lightning to be able to find the fastest route to ground, right? And so when lightning actually strikes, it will also cause in the sand lots of crystals to form. And so they're able to find all these different lightning crystals around the pyramid and on the pyramid. And when that lightning actually hits, that's what allows everything to get started. And this is the kind of the catalyst for where something doesn't quite line up with the timeline, because with this technology and with the theory that he's proposing, not only were they able to use this for making aqueous chemicals, but they were able to effectively use the electricity that was generated to further fuel their expansion into the Saharan desert, which, remember, at this time was green. And so they were able to actually fuel their expansion. And they got to the point, and if this theory holds true, they were actually able to generate their own thunderstorm systems with the pyramids. And they had their own self-generating industrial system. And they were able to create clouds that had not only thunder and lightning, but carried rain. And they were able to use that in addition to moving everything over to fuel a massive industrial era.
Oh, Matt, this is a lot to take in. I feel like it's an ontological shock. I'd seen these headlines. I'd seen these two interviews. It's just a lot. It just feel like we have to rewrite history. You have to look into all of these different sort of theories and speculations. Pat, I'm so excited to keep moving forward.
Yeah,
let's keep going.
We should just keep moving with the clips and keep moving forward. And
I'm ready for the climax.
All right, let's make it rock.
So let me start with this, so you can see the collection bowl at Abu Sir. So this is the pyramid complex known as Abu Sir, and there's 3 major pyramids out there.
Okay.
And the 2 that we're going to be looking at are the Pyramid of Neferkare and the Pyramid of Nayusare. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is to establish the function of the geology of the Egyptian pyramids. So predominantly inside of these structures, there's 3 types of materials, and all 3 of these types of stones have very specific functions. So when you're looking at limestone, which is the majority of the body of the pyramids are made from limestone. Mm-hmm. Limestone is a dielectric material that has the capacity for storing electric fields. Then you have red granite. Red granite is also a dielectric material, but there's a very special property about red granite, is that it has high content of crystalline quartz. And a lot of people talk about the piezoelectric property of quartz in regard to the function of the Great Pyramid. Mm-hmm. But in my research, I've determined that it's actually something called the inverse piezoelectric property, where the stone and the quartz is introduced to an electric field, which leads to the production of ultrasound. So a lot of people talk about the sound properties of the Egyptian pyramids, and the big question is, how are these sound properties activated? Well, it's activated by the interface of these electric fields coursing through the red granite, causing vibrations within the quartz that produce ultrasound. And we'll get to that when we talk about the function of the Great Pyramid, which utilizes ultrasound as a sonochemical acoustic catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sort of a breaking field in modern day chemistry where they're using sound waves to catalyze chemical reactions. And that'll be directly applicable to the conversion of sulfur dioxide into sulfur trioxide inside what I call the contact process chamber or the grand gallery of the Great Pyramid.
Okay.
So let me skip through. So this is black basalt, and this is going to be particularly relevant when we get back to the function of the Great Pyramid, because the Great Pyramid also has a black basalt temple floor on the eastern side of the Great Pyramid. So for example, at the top of the pyramid, those are the smallest stones used in the construction. They put the biggest stones down at the bottom, and every successive layer of the Egyptian pyramids, the stones get smaller and smaller the higher you go up.
Right. But how big? So, Stephen, type in like the granite blocks inside the king's chamber. And because there's like
they're huge.
There's levels of them, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know the specific weight. I was going to say 65 tons. This thing here says 70 tons. But
so
yeah,
those 70-ton granite blocks.
Those are incredibly large.
There you go. Yeah, click on that.
Yep.
Well, that's shitty. Maybe the next one. Maybe you can blow it up. So I want people to be able to see the, zoom in on that thing. So there's like, why the hell would they do that? Those massive 70-ton granite blocks with gaps in between them.
Yep.
With like a little TP roof on top. And that's pretty high up in the pyramid, right? The King's Chamber?
Correct. Yeah, it's about in the center of the structure. So it's not all the way at the top, but it is fairly high within the construction itself. And there is no good explanation. I don't really focus too much on the construction aspect because it's one of those mysteries where, I mean, you could really speculate all day about how they did it. There's a great researcher named Stephen Meyer that proposes that the pyramids were built using water apparatuses and that they were floated to the construction site using like wooden barges. And they recently published an article that corroborates that idea, where they found a system of channels leading up to the Giza Plateau.
Right.
And you can use water enclosures and a system of water locks to move these stones up to the pyramid sites. And then let's say you establish your outer layer of casing stones first.
Yes.
You could then fill that area with water and use that to float the stones up to each other layer. So that's Stephen Meyer's idea. And it's a very interesting idea because I do believe that this civilization, they were masters of hydraulics, and they would have used water to their advantage in basically every application, whether it be construction of the pyramids or specifically regarding my research, water facilitates these chemical reactions, whether it's the mechanism of operation to push the chemicals through the system, also used as chemical reactants. Water is used inside the red pyramid. It's also used inside the Great Pyramid. Well, it's used inside all the pyramids, actually, in terms of the mechanism of operation that drives these things is water.
What do you think the reason that those granite blocks inside the King's Chamber, the bottoms of them are like perfectly flat, right? And the tops are kind of like they're not perfect. They're kind of rough.
Yeah, so that's from the construction. So you see where the rough part is in the core and the flat part is laying on the level of stone below it. So they use that to make sure that it was level going all the way up with each level. You don't need the center piece because it was exposed to the inside of these relieving chambers. But on the edge of each one, they're flattened out. But in the center, they're completely rough.
Right.
So this was also a civilization that understood the mentality of work smarter and not harder.
So you think that rough part, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, right? It was never going to be utilized. So I also believe that these structures are geometrically configured to amplify sound.
All right, fellas, where do we begin? Because he said a lot of stuff, and I'm just like trying to wrap my head around all this stuff. So how about we'll work our way around counterclockwise. Let's start with you, Matt.
What's important to take away from that is we're dealing with a civilization that is incredibly smart. They're intuitive people, and they want to get things done in a reasonable amount of time. And so I think that's shown through the different diagrams that we've seen. And these are operationally functional, or they were at one point, right? And so they were built with use in mind. And to his point, we could speculate how they did it all day long. I personally agree that they were masters of hydraulics. They had some form of system that they used. There's no way they couldn't have had a system in place. But what he's really getting at to, and what he's alluding to here at the very end of that second clip, is they are able to use sound and oscillation technology in order to further these chemical reactions, which is really, really important, because not all of these reactions are occurring from mechanical forces, right? So sometimes you have that they have these acoustic chambers, and those chambers and the reverberations of things going on allow those chemical reactions to further go on. And so, kind of stepping, back and looking at the quartz and the electric fields, right, from that second to last clip that we saw there, that strikes. The stone is able to then use that. It starts the acoustic drums, so to speak, right? That starts the machine, and then they're able to then use those sound waves to start some of those intermediary reactions, which then kickstarts the rest of the process.
Let's hop in the DeLorean and travel back to this time. Why are they doing this, Matt? Your top.
So no, that's
three theories. What are your top three? And it doesn't have to be anything that necessarily matches up with our reality at the current time. Just go for it. Like, what are your top three? Like the whole process, like you said, with the lightning coming in,
the ultimate,
and what were they doing?
Ultimate goal, right, is to start making mass chemicals so that way you can start moving your civilization forward. And so the two most important chemicals that they're making are forms of sulfuric acid and ammonia. Ammonia is important, like I was mentioning earlier, because you need that for fertilizer, and you can use it for plenty of applications outside of just farming. You can also use sulfuric acid to do things like metallurgy. You can also use it for other forms of mining, extraction of mining material. So you can do all sorts of things with it, metallurgy, right? So you have two really, really important chemicals that are now able to put your civilization ahead of everybody else.
Yeah,
that in and of itself is huge. And so, especially if we're thinking about it from the perspective of there were other ancient civilizations out there at the same time. Okay, you have the ancient Americas, you have civilizations in Asia, you have civilizations in all over the planet that are all really existing at the same time that have started to figure these things out. Europe is another prime example in England, where they have plenty of sites where they are structured very, 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 very similarly to the Egyptian pyramids. And so what we're seeing here, we are seeing a globalized network of technology that is reaching every corner of the planet. And we can see these through the different materials and the things that these other civilizations are using outside of just Egypt. And so these civilizations had a very distinct understanding of these properties, and they were smart. It's not like we're dealing with a species that is any less smart than we are now. The people that existed 5,000 years ago are the same type of people that we would talk to now. If you were to see somebody from 5,000 years ago, genetically speaking, they might look a little bit different, but it's still a human being. And so we're not seeing in 5,000 years intelligence just rapidly expand. We're dealing with smart, intuitive people, and I think that's what we're really seeing. Is we're seeing the full-fledged effect of those civilizations. And he hasn't alluded to it, but in his theory, the Egyptians were so good at it that they were able to start terraforming.
That totally makes sense. Moving civilization forward with agriculture and metallurgy. What about the cosmos? What about the non-human intelligent aspect of this? Why were these pyramids lined up with constellations and stars? And I mean, we still can't take our eye off all the moving parts necessarily to be like, well, there still was a spiritual component to this as well.
There's a couple of things. So I'm going to talk about Stonehenge for just 1 second, because this is in line. So Stonehenge and a lot of other obelisks or sites are cosmologically aligned, because they had this understanding that electromagnetic fields and the way properties and matter could be affected, they understood that there was a cosmic effect to this. And so they had a deep understanding, number one, that you could actually do advanced chemistry in their words alchemy. You could do those advanced things. Now, the other component to that is, could you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, just being able to tie it to, like, be
Yes.
able to
Okay.
see it as
Yeah.
a
Okay.
system, like the spiritual component, the cosmic component, like, were they being influenced by a non-human
Absolutely.
intelligence?
And this is my personal theory, is that I think we are right now we're a pre-FTL species, which is faster than light. And so I think that we sit at a really interesting inflection point right now, where I think we have definitely been influenced by other beings that are extraterrestrial. And I think that those ancient civilizations 15 to 5,000 years ago directly had contact with them. I think that they were a part of some form of galactic or interplanetary scale thing. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Maybe it was the floods that Genesis is recommended to. Maybe there was a great war. I don't know what happened. But what's really interesting is all of these ancient civilizations vanished right around the same time.
Yeah.
And they're all referencing the same cataclysms. They're all referencing the same cultural events. And it was almost like humanity got reset and the clock reset.
Yeah.
And so my theory is that at one point in time, we were interconnected at a much larger level. And then something happened. And now we're not there yet.
Are we like a farm? Are we an experiment? Are we sort of slaves? Are we like Disclosure Day?
Combination. Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I personally think that there potentially is some credence to the Anunnaki theory, and particularly after having read lots of different cross-cultural references and just seeing how these different mythoses have actually formed and developed. I think that there is a component to where humans at some point in time have been potentially messed with genetically. I don't know where or when that could have been, but I think at some point in time, we got a little bit too advanced with biology. Something happened, and then now they're gone. And I think that, especially having seen France, several other European countries, and even the United States, saying coming out and saying UFOs are real. I think those are the same ones that we're dealing with. I don't necessarily think we're dealing with anybody new here. I think we're still dealing with the same ones that have always kind of been here. And I think we're just kind of right now a pre-FTL intergalactic melting pot.
FTL, one more time. What's that stand for?
Faster than light. So we don't have the capability to really travel among the stars yet.
Yeah. Pat, as you look at all of the things we've been talking about today, and Matthew, his intellect and kind of his processor in his brain is a lot. It's great, but it's like, wow, trying to keep up with it is challenging. What sort of theory are you formulating, Pat, at this point?
Well, I mean, everything that you're saying makes sense. Another thing that jumped out to me, Tone, that we've been previously talking about energy vortex. And I kind of wonder if this also plays into that as well, because you were referencing Stonehenge, and there are very specific parts throughout the world where I feel like ancient civilizations have harnessed the power of energy vortexes. We have one in Washington State over in Orcas Island, and the people who live there will talk about this low energy hum. They'll talk about the same thing over at Stonehenge, that they believe that the Druids harnessed power from it when the sun was at exactly very specific coordinates. They talk about it in Sedona, Mount Adams over in Washington State, and so I kind of often wonder too, is there a connection to that? To where there's just very specific parts within the world that have this ability to harness certain energies. And of all the things that you're mentioning, is it possible that all those aligned at the right specific time, especially when you're talking about star patterns? And so I don't know. This might be a leap, but I feel like there is some connection.
I love that, Pat. I love that you're bringing all this together. Let's do a rapid fire on our big theory of everything. What's your big theory of everything? I mean, I can go first since I put it out there, but if anybody's ready to go, what's your big theory of everything? Putting all this stuff together. And I know that's a lot of pressure, but you guys want me to go first?
It kind of is.
I can jump in. Either way works.
Go for it, Matt. I'll go second, and
All
then
right.
we'll let
Yeah.
Pat close it.
Okay.
So after having really watched that video and just seeing lots of follow-up research and after having read everything that I've read, I'm really inclined to lean in and believe his theory that they were using the pyramids for something outside of just burial tombs, and I think that our current timeline, I don't think it's right. I think it's incorrect. I don't know where everything falls into place, but I definitely think that within the past 15,000 years, we've had another iteration of modern civilization, and I think that this is really just this is the second go around.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. I think there's been many resets. I think this is some sort of simulation with the near-death experiences. Looking at that, many years ago, I'd be like, no way. But really extrapolating all of that information is that we choose this scenario. Maybe we come here to experience hardships and challenges and learn and grow. It seems like when humanity or whatever intelligence is down here advances to a certain level, that somebody's like, whoa, that's too far. You got to keep it within the parameters of the simulation. I don't know. I could be completely off, but that's where I stand right now.
Yeah. How close are we to the concept of the movie The Matrix? It makes me wonder. I mean, and there's a lot of different people that'll have different thoughts about that. I think when you also bring in the idea of disclosure and faith and talking about how essentially just the mere discussion of it can really rattle people to their core. And there's so many different ways we can go with this. And I appreciate you both taking the time to share those perspectives, because I'm maybe safe to say that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I don't know, but the fact that we can have a conversation about it, I think is cool. And I have a feeling, Matt, you're going to be back again. I don't think
I would love to.
Seen of Matthew Smiley.
I would definitely love to be back. I've got some fun ones.
Well, and I like the opportunity to add another guest in the fold. That was something we even talked about in terms of the ETU perspective and looking at the show and everything. Like, we kind of had gotten away from the live guests, and we had done a lot of more reaction videos and really inner discussions and stuff. So it's exciting to have a guest back in the fold, and I see us really harnessing those perspectives again moving forward. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a privilege and it's a great opportunity to be here. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed tonight's show. Matt took us to a whole nother level. It was incredible, amazing, intuitive, introspective, all of the above. And so I really appreciate you, Matthew. How old are you, by the way?
27. 27.
At 27, he's wise beyond his years. I was just worried about, I don't know, what cereal am I going to buy, or what cartoon am I going to watch today?
Yeah,
well, it's great to be able to flex the alien muscles and brain. I don't get the opportunity to really talk about this very much, so it's always a fun topic. So,
well, man, it's been a blast for sure, and we're gonna this is just the beginning. I think you'll have a chance to join us. I look forward to diving into some other topics too, because initially when we were talking about pyramids, I'm like, we haven't really gone that direction. We've went a bunch of other directions, so I'm glad that we focused here, because we're going to be able to really spin a bunch of different directions from here, Tom.
And we're going to need to, Crooks, this is his first absence at Extra Terrestrial University, ETU, and his background is really heavy in coast to coast, maybe number one, and then number two is ancient aliens. And we really had a great time at UFO Fest in McMinnville, Oregon, listening to, I can't remember his name, but we listened to the Ancient Aliens guy, which, previously I'd kind of poo-pooed on that show a little bit, but I think it was Jay Martell. His presentation actually was very scientific and it wasn't coming to any conclusions necessarily, just putting those questions out there. So yeah, Matthew, I hope you can come back really, really soon and meet Brian, Mr. Crooks, Professor Crooks. And yeah, I don't know, Pat, do you want to send us home?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. No, I think you're going to be a good fit in terms of with Crooks, because a lot of the stuff that you're interested in it too. So yeah, I look forward to that, to be able to have the four of us together for another version of Extraterrestrial University. Well, Tone, are we at 19? What is the lesson count? We're real close to 20. I think
it's 20.
Okay.
It's 21. This is
lesson
21.
number 21. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you have been listening to Extraterrestrial University, hanging out with the ETU crew, -1, but adding Matt into the mix today, Matthew Smiley. We appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, there we are, fellas. Lesson number 21, and we look forward to lesson number 22. We will catch you on the next one.
ETU